Welcome. This is James Maida, and we're back with another segment of our Illuminating Conversations. And I'm really pleased today to have all the way from Melbourne, Australia, my good friend, Neil Spencer. I have to tell a little personal story. Neil was one of the first people I met when I went to Australia in 1990, looking to set up a lab in Australia. Very friendly, met him for the first time, and throughout the years, I can only describe him as one phrase. He's the consultant's consultant. When you really don't know what to do and the consultants that you've hired need help, they're probably calling Neil but not letting you know. He's been 33 years of industry experience, which is just an incredible wealth of knowledge. Not only is he in Australia and New Zealand and has worked at every major or with every major betting and casino group in that country, he's also opened casinos in the United States, Macau, in Canada, really smart with respect to technology. And one of the things that is great about Neil is he was on the cutting edge of when systems and gaming machines came together, whether it was in New South Wales, where we had to hook up all the games to a single system, or when the Crown Casino went live, or the Victoria experience with distributed gaming. He has spent his lifetime understanding how gaming machines operate, but how they connect with systems and all about data. So we're really pleased to have him here with us. Welcome, Neil, all the way from Melbourne.
Thanks very much, James. Very kind of you. Great introduction. Thank you.
Well, we're trying to have different perspectives from around the world, and we're all consumed with many times with the American experience of COVID, our American political system, which we won't discuss here on the call. But what has COVID been like generally to the population of both Australia and New Zealand, being more island nations? How's it been going down there?
Look, I think the one word is we've been isolated intentionally. The government's put the barriers up, and that was a good and a bad thing. The isolation meant that wasn't able to get people in and out of the country, which meant that we didn't have rampant running away of this disease. We still had it. We had some significant public health response that has been damaged in the country. There's no doubt about that. Damage in a commercial sense. We had all sorts of industries shut down, gaming included. We've had central business districts of major centres being isolated because work at home orders. Travel's been restricted significantly in your local area, but we're getting out of it now. We've got 0 cases across the whole country. We had huge, amazing. We're starting the vaccine rollout, so we're behind the world a little bit, but the isolation that we have has been a very good protection for the country. So we're enthusiastic. We're getting there. We still have to wear masks from time to time. We just run the Australian Open tennis, so we're Grand Slam. We prove we can do that, but it's cautious steps forward.
And unlike the United States, and many people watching this from the U.S. and around the world, your country is unique in that you do have a federal government, but states have massive amounts of power. And so when you can restrict the borders and not allow people to go from the state of South Australia to the state of Victoria, which is where you are in Melbourne, or close the border literally between Victoria and New South Wales. And for those of you who are watching don't know, New South Wales is the state that has Sydney in it. Simply the largest city in the country. So you guys kind of approach this a little bit different. States run the show, much less than the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some similarities. The federal government still operate things like telecommunications. Interestingly, they operate major healthcare, aged healthcare, that is. So, but the states themselves regulate most things, as is gaming and the like. So, yeah, a state on its own can decide to put barriers up. So imagine if I'm living in California, if I want to go even to Vegas, I've got to get a permit to travel, even today. So 6 months ago, I was not allowed to travel and I couldn't go in either direction. Today I can travel, but I still need to prove who I am, where I've been, and get a permit for that. And that's done state by state level.
Obviously, GLI has employees both in New South Wales, Sydney, and Victoria, in Melbourne, and also in South Australia. And they're doing great. They're back in the office. You said there's no cases, but we can't really travel to see them because we know that there's a quarantine mandate. Once you get to the airport, you have to go to a hotel for a couple of weeks. So it is challenging, but I'm glad that in terms of death and despair and real sickness, you've been avoided it. But you've been in the gaming industry for 33 years, and how has this affected your clients, the gaming industry in general? Whether it's casino, what I call distributed or VLT gaming, where the machines are in pubs and clubs and outside of major casinos, and lastly, you have a huge sports betting. So why don't you just take each one of them, Neil, and how have they been affected, all three of them?
So casinos and VLTs, they were shut down. So governments, each government shut down places where people gather. You were pretty much homebound. If you could work from home, you were required to work from home. So like Vegas, casinos were shut. VLT, pubs shut, not just for gaming, but for food and entertainment as well. So now different states were shut for different periods. So New South Wales, you talk about, that was shut for 3 months. Queensland, our northernmost state, shut for 4 months, and down south in Victoria, where I am, we were shut for 7 months. So no casino, no VLTs. Sports wagering, on the other hand, just blossomed. You could still access, the events were still being run. So the horse racing industry, which is huge down here, still operated. They had COVID-safe plans, so horse racing still operated. Therefore, the major consumer item of betting on the horses was still possible. We had access to sports because most of that comes from overseas footage. We could still bet on all the abstract stuff like your election and individual events. So the shutdown had major impacts financially. So even a shutdown of 3 months, we saw revenue falls. When people bounced back, we saw revenue falls in the order of 16 to 20%. Massive, but the kickback has bounced back. There was clearly some pent-up demand. That's now normalised now. So effectively, the period that we lost, if you take that across the year, so Victoria, where I am, we've lost 50% of growth in that year, 50% of revenue, because we're down for 50. So we can slowly come back, but what it's done too is make people think about social distancing. So when we reopened, we still had to have every second slot machine turned off to create the 6-foot social distancing. Turns out customers are very happy with that. They go in and people have tried to turn on machines that are closer, and there's been kickback from customers going, he's too close. I'm not comfortable here. So
socially distanced. Neil, before we go further into what's happening today, I want to just clarify for the viewers here, because it's important. Most of us think that you can't gamble on the internet in Australia, but that's actually not exactly true. You can use mobile phones and internet to gamble on, I believe, horses, but not in other things. Can you just clarify that for the audience? Because I think we get the wrong impression up here in
sure.
In hemisphere.
So we've got a version of your Wire Act called the Interactive Gambling Act. So online, as you say, James, I can bet on a horse racing. I can bet on sports betting. I can even use a credit card for that, which should come into focus soon. But and I can be on a train, I can be at an airport, I can be at home, I can be at a restaurant. So sports betting, wagering, betting online is quite legal and okay. When you get to, and it narrows down quickly, a spinning reel slot machine or VLT, that's against the law to operate that online in a paid for sense. So I'll clarify that in a moment. So casinos are not allowed to have an online presence for slot machine gambling. Clubs can't do that. Operators can't do that. And we're also meant to be blocked from gaining access to online slot machines from anywhere in the world. It is possible to play, the social games, so Facebooks and the Candy Crush and the likes and all the sites that people have, but paid for games on the internet are illegal. So sports betting, no problem. Slot machine or casino style, against the law.
Wow. So, you're in a country with no cases, 0 cases, which is just great news. Obviously you'll need a vaccine, but if you keep this up, it's great. And I know that there's some concern in all of our worlds that what happens after the pandemic may not be exactly what it was like before the pandemic.
Yep.
What are you starting to see? I know you said you started to talk a little bit about people are walking into casinos where the machines have now been spread out. Has there been a reduction of the gaming machines? And what are we going to be looking for in gaming machines on floors of casinos or at the clubs and pubs and the sports clubs, football clubs and whatnot?
Well, so here's some early trends, and let's hope they don't sustain this for too long. But some of the early trends are a higher propensity for young people to be playing. Now, in effect, what that means is the older people are not coming out. So there's caution still in the community amongst older people. That's shown up in all the stats, whether it's a casino or a VLT. So people are deciding when to go out, how often to go out, and there's a caution around that. We're seeing more play during the daytimes. So where promotions and the like used to encourage people to be at a casino or at a bar, 7, 8, 9 at night, they've been brought way forward because the patron numbers are peaking during the daytime and falling off at nighttime. So, and the third thing that we've seen quite strongly is average bet's gone up. So quite remarkably, it's like there is this pent-up demand. People are conscious of time, so and whether it's through the product that's been left on the floor, but so we've got these 3 things, but average bet has gone up, and that's probably been the biggest driver of the revenue kick that we've seen in post-opening.
Is the revenue going to meet where it used to be, but with less machines? In other words, less dead areas of the floor?
Revenue in the places that opened early, like New South Wales, so they had a 3-month shutdown, they are back on par. So month for month, they're back on par where they've gone. So they just had a dip, if you like, that was 100% reflective of being shut down. What they're finding, though, is because we've still got density limits on how many people are allowed in a venue and how many machines can be turned on, there's a lot of operators have only got 60, maybe 65% of their machines in play. Now, we're getting the same revenues. So that's, to me, is a reflection of the customers who like to use gaming more often are still there. The less frequent customers, maybe lower value, if you like, are not there as often. And also, venues are not full. So, as any gaming operator will tell you, you hardly ever need all of the machines that you got on your floor. This is showing up quite markedly now. You probably only need 60, 70% of what was on your floor. Right. And because that's all that's been able to be turned on, that's all that's in play. That's why we're making the same money. So the choice around my capital investment going forward, that'll be interesting.
Neil, have you seen have a lot of the multi-station electronic, like roulettes and blackjacks, and are they playing well? And what about table games in these casinos, the live action games? Has there been a change in that?
So the electronic roulettes, firstly, they're limited, very, very severely limited in the VLT market. You just can't, effectively, you can't play them. So they are the product only of casinos. Electronic forms still got good action because effectively it's a slot machine. You can have that physical isolation. You don't need to be in front of someone. table games is suffering because in most casinos in Australia, you still have to wear a mask because you're so close and you're looking at a dealer. So that's an inhibiting factor. Some people choose just to say that's not for me. I just can't wear a mask. So table revenues are down. And as it turns out, because of at the high end in Australian casinos, revenues are down. That's through lack of international travel.
Right, because obviously you receive a lot of players from China and Macau and in the Asian countries. So going forward though, you're unique though in the world, Australia, New Zealand is, because you have no cases, but you really haven't earnestly started rolling out the vaccine in a major way. The rest of us have lots and lots of cases with lots of death, and we're trying to roll out the vaccine to stop the sickness and the death. Do you think that these players' changes, the changes in the attitudes, those that you just mentioned, will they change once the vaccine is there and people are not so worried about the possibility of getting sick without a vaccine?
Absolutely. And I think the vaccine is important for any country. It's important for us because that will be the trigger to allow people to travel across our borders, our international borders. So at the moment, the biggest caution is whilst we've got zero cases, low numbers, we'd still be very reticent to let international guests in, and we need them for our prosperity, for our businesses, and people need to travel as well. So we need the vaccines. At the moment, there's still a cautious looking over your shoulder. Who are you? Are you clean? Where are you from? Right. But we need the vaccine to give the confidence to go, aircraft can come in and we can leave.
Before I talk to you about what the future of gaming and maybe future of online in Australia, do you see any new gaming products that have gotten traction during the pandemic? Something that was new, whether it's a game type, a game theme, or something with respect to what people are gambling on that has now all of a sudden been really popular?
Well, James, I don't think we probably haven't had an opportunity to get new games into the market because people were constrained in their access to cash and really didn't buy anything. Right. Well, what we have seen though is people being drawn to higher value jackpots. So, and this will be a reflection of, I've had some financial stress through lockdown. I need the cash. So jackpots that had start outs of $10,000, $20,000, they're now being replaced by, $40,000, $50,000 start outs because that's what customers are wanting. Right. Now, there's a lot of nervous gaming managers out there going, hey, that's a lot of money in a base I've got to need to accommodate for. But the trend towards jackpot games, higher value jackpot games, capacity to higher bet, that's dominant right now.
We're going to come back to that in a minute. In the United States, all of a sudden there's this rush towards online gaming, sportsbook. You already have the sportsbook. We covered that. But America was decidedly way behind in online gaming. And now the technology looks like it's been pulled forward and governments are getting more used to it. Your government doesn't allow online gaming with respect to casino games or casino style. Do you see, anecdotally, is that going to change, or is there a push for that, or are people really not going for that lever at this point in the government?
We're hamstrung with politics there, James. So, I think on the consumer end, they would love access to more online product. I have a view that there's a lot of, call them low spend customers who would nowadays be just as comfortable in their lounge room with friends playing on an iPad or a device than they would go into a fully fledged property. So I think the demand is there, but politics comes into it. So in our country, like America, gaming is regulated at a state level, which means they, amongst other things, collect the taxes. So a nationalised gaming approach, or even just enabling that, there's a risk that, a two-part risk. Someone wants to clip the ticket along the way, like a federal government. And secondly, someone might impose limitations that one state doesn't prefer. So, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some technology other than the game. And I know that you are like Mr. Systems and really understand how people connect things. And I know that you think that the cashless technologies, the contactless way of betting, and certainly digital wallets, that's something you've been looking at for a while, with your clients. How do you see that moving forward now that people don't want to touch anything, much less cash coins or whatnot? How are you seeing that in your clients there in Australia?
Look, I think the demand is there, but it'll be a slow transition. But, here's the backdrop. We're running out of cash. So, I look at my children, they don't carry cash and I hardly carry any. So COVID, we had major stores here putting signs up, digital payment only. So you couldn't go to a Home Depot and pay with cash. You couldn't go to an Office Max and pay with cash. So we've just been attuned more and more to being in the digital space. So, but we've got gaming devices, whether it's a table or a slot machine, a VLT, they only operate on cash as the initiating transaction. So we need to find a way. I purchased my Tito ticket first, maybe go to an ATM or a ticket redemption terminal and do a purchase transaction, or I do everything from my mobile device at a slot machine. So that's the work I've been doing with different governments. It's early days, but just like American Gaming Association, there's demand for it.
Neil, is there a law against using, a card, a player card for which you have a digital wallet, or using Apple Pay, just to name a brand, or is there rules against that in Australia? Does Australia require just cash going into a game, or are you allowed to do it and you just haven't adopted that technology yet?
James, there's limitations on the access to cash, and that's probably where the technology and the laws need to combine. In Victoria, where I live, we're not allowed to have an automatic teller machine on the premises where gaming is operated. So even if I put an ATM in the corner of a public bar, I can't have that if there's VLTs in that building. In other markets, in New South Wales, there's limitations on you're not allowed to do direct debit transactions inside a gaming room. So
you put money on account somewhere at the Crown Casino or the Star Casino and have a player card, and you would put the money on account, walk onto the gaming floor, and play with those transactions.
Correct.
That's not allowed, or that is allowed?
That is allowed. So we've had card-based cashless in this country. Well, I set up a system back in 1989. So
I remember.
But it's fairly widespread in New South Wales, where I can have a player card and I can put money on account and I can move that from game to game. So that's permitted. Tito is like it's a digital transaction. So it's permitted. It's a connection between your financial institution.
Right.
And limitation. We've got limits on how much cash you can draw out as well. They're the things that
your governments, because obviously we work for every single one of them, and we test, large amounts of most machines in Australia. You do worry about, the government does it as they should everywhere. You call it harm minimalization. You want to make sure that people are not going to be harming themselves, and that's why there's no ATMs on floors or all of these other rules that you're talking about. And obviously you just talked about higher bets now from less people. And I'm sure that the harm minimalization groups are looking at that and trying to understand, is that something that's permanently now going to happen or not, right?
God bless them, they have their role. They often have a distorted view. We've had a lot of press here. I don't know, perhaps it hasn't made it outside, but people have been drawing a line. These higher revenues must be from money laundering, from build up cash, which is not the case.
Huge. It hit your headlines around some casino investigations. We won't get into those specifically, but money laundering has been and is becoming a larger issue everywhere in the world. people say that you can track money laundering if you're using digital wallets and cashless because it's not cash, it's easily traceable. How do you see that playing out in the Australian landscape? The attention that they're placing on money laundering, minimization.
So the main thing is there's a responsibility on a gaming operator to make sure that they know where the cash has come from to the best of their ability. We have a federal regulator who regulates large cash transactions. We have government initiatives that are called the black economies to try to stamp out the use of cash in large amounts. So the federal government is going to impose lower and lower limits about what you can actually transact in cash. Gaming operators are going to have a lot more diligence around know the customer. So these are terms that are quite common in the online space. Know your customer, verification, and this will be a big deal in digital. More so, I think one of the big things that need to be sorted out to make digital acceptable around the country is, how do I stop James Maida from using a credit card that's owned by Neil Spencer? So chasing through the identity from the actual source of funds through to the point of consumption, that's the big thing that digital has to solve. But on the face, AML is now been thrown in a big spotlight in Australia. It's really about top-end transactions for VIP customers, but the sentiment is the same. Know your customer, know where their cash has come from, undertake steps to make sure that you know who, and this will impact even mid-level VIP customers in casinos will now have to probably provide more information about their status, their wealth, their access to funds, just to satisfy what will be new laws around know your customer, where that cash come from.
As we all know, Neil, things happen. There is always a governmental response. I think in Australia, we see great government response and real thoughtful government response. You have a group of regulators that get together with their group meetings. They think through it. They don't impose too much heartache on the general public, but at the same time, as you said, they have a job to do, and they're really thoughtful about getting everybody's buy-in and without talking about what's in the news because, ongoing investigations about money laundering and whatnot. I think, though, it's important to know that, if there's a real problem in Australia, the Australian regulators will definitely solve it. So we're really pleased about that, that you could talk a little bit about that today with us, because I think that many people are probably asking, what's happening. The next 5 years, you've been doing this 30 years. My last question to you is, we met 30 years ago. We never thought we'd be doing this via Zoom. We didn't know what Zoom was. The internet was hardly working. And who thought there was even a pandemic? I didn't even know that something like this happened in 1918. So how do you see the recovery over the next several years? Again, from your client's perspective, which are all the major casinos in Australia, and you just know what's happening all over. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think we serve a purpose, and it is gaming is an outlet of entertainment for a whole lot of people. So it won't go away. Operators will reinvent the mix between gaming, food, entertainment, the total proposition. But whether it's a VLT, a bar in a VLT, or VLT in a bar rather, or a casino, we'll still survive. We'll still be relevant, and customers will still come in. The investment will still be there. You can't turn off the access to this form of entertainment because of the widespread usage of it. We will see change, though, in products. So we will see in tables, definitely digital transactions across the table. That's already operating in parts of Vegas. There's parts of Australia where you can purchase chips with an EFTPOS card or a phone across the table. We'll see more and more of that. So I think cash, hopefully we never lose chips, but cash will go from the table scene. Slot machines, as said, I suspect we will get away, more than ever, get away from a physical box I've been saying to regulators for the last few years, there's nothing in any technical standard, none of yours either, James, that says a slot machine needs to be bolted to the floor. So, we've got all the rules around RNGs and the like, but so I see, and I've been encouraging, I think, imagine walking into a bar where there's, I bring my own device and the like, and I can gamble in the comfort of lounge chairs at a bar. So I think the pace of technology, the speed of networks, mobile devices is going to put pressure on what's a slot machine look like. And that'll be a good thing because people will enjoy the space we've got today of this space and social distancing we've created. The opportunity for an operator and the supply side is how do we utilize that? How do we grow from that? But yeah, we'll still be here, James. I'll see you in a few years, mate.
I'll see you as we open the border. It's been a great conversation with Neil Spencer on Illuminating Conversations. Neil, thank you for all your insight, all your support of GLI for all these years. And again, I can't wait to meet you down in Victoria, and we'll be able to get to see each other face to face. So
Good on you, mate. Looking forward to that.
With that, thanks for joining us today.